Well, first of all, I want to welcome everybody. I want to say thank you for being here. My name is Francisco Muneton. I'm the mental health coordinator. I work here at Grand River. I am certified in mental health first aid for adults and youth through SAMHSA. If you have any other questions about some of that stuff, I'm always happy to answer them after the presentation. My presentation today is about mental health. I wanted it to be more than a presentation. I wanted it to be a little bit more of a conversation. So I would hope that this is as interactive as we can get it. I understand you're eating lunch, so please feel free to call me out and be like, I'm eating. That's okay. And we're just going to roll with this as we can. I am going to ask for some audience participation. So if you're willing to help, please do so. But the title of this presentation, this introduction to mental health, is somebody listening. Before I start this presentation, I understand that this can be a heavy topic for some people, right? I understand, and I want to acknowledge that everybody's at a different point in their lives. So if at any point in time you feel like you need to implement some of those self-care strategies, please feel free to do so, whether that means you have to stand up, pace around the room, try not to come up here, of course, but there's a back area where you can pace. Or you simply just step out of the room and come back whenever you feel like you're ready. Okay? I have placed some stuff on your desk, so like I said before, feel free to look over that. Just don't flip the page just yet. Okay? Everybody good with that? Perfect. All right. So the first thing that I would like to do is call a call and response. All right. So this is going to require some participation from you all. If you ever went through high school, you might have experienced this at any pep rally. So we're going to try it out really quick. Okay. Ashley's geared up. She's ready. I was
the spirit leader.
I see that.
Yeah. I know. Shocker.
Yeah. What a shocker. No, I'm just kidding. So call and response. So for this exercise, I would love for one or however many people to ask the question, is somebody listening? You can emphasize it, you can just, don't whisper it. Whatever you do, just don't whisper it. But you can ask the question out loud. Okay, so is somebody listening? And then 1, 2, 3, however many people want to respond, will respond with, I'm listening. Okay, so let's give it a quick shot. I'm not going to pick on anybody yet, so if anybody would like to shout out, is somebody listening?
Is somebody listening? I'm listening!
I'm listening. Perfect. Thank you so much. So every single time throughout the presentation that we see this icon, the 4 question marks, I want somebody, and it's okay to interrupt me, okay? So if I'm in the middle of a sentence and somebody shouts, is somebody listening? I would love for someone else to respond, okay? So I'm giving you permission to interrupt me, all right? Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So
is somebody listening?
I'm listening. Perfect. That was a great, yeah, good job, Brittany. That was a great example. Thank you. I was waiting for that. I was like, who's going to interrupt me? All right, so I would like for you to ask yourselves these questions. Please do not answer them out loud. Just ask yourself in your head and just kind of have this moment of reflection within yourself, okay? I'm going to ask these out loud. Have you ever felt like you needed guidance through a change in life? Have you ever felt or had so much to say that it felt like people did not want to listen? Have you ever felt so alone that even when you are surrounded by people, no one sees you? And finally, have you felt like there is no hope in life or a reason to keep on living? If you answered yes to any of these questions in any capacity, again, acknowledging that people are in different places of their life, but if you answered yes to any of these, hopefully you can walk away from this presentation with even one thing that you can remember that might help you feel more at ease with these questions. If you are here in this room and you're thinking, well, I didn't answer yes to any of these questions, that's awesome, that's great. Thank you for being here. That means that you're probably here to get some tools to help someone else. And so if you are, and that is why you're here, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So let's talk about what mental health and mental illness is. All right, so a little bit of a difference in the definitions. Webster Dictionary defines mental health as a condition of being sound mentally and emotionally. It is the ability to meet the demands of daily life. All right, so if mental health is the overall mark of how well we're doing mentally and emotionally, then mental illness is how our health conditions or mental conditions that involve changes in emotion, thinking, or behaviors, or any combination of these. All all right? So anything that kind of affects our emotions, anything that affects the way that we deal with, with life itself. Those are mental illnesses. Mental illnesses can be due to genetic compositions. There's a lot more things that contribute to mental illnesses, and we're going to talk about those in a minute, okay? One of the things that I really liked about WHO, or the World Health Organization, is that they define mental health as a state of mental well-being and it breaks it down into 3 different components, all right? So I'm going to be talking about these 3 different components in some way or shape throughout this presentation. So kind of keep these 3 in your mind, in the back of your mind. Feel free to write down on those the paper I gave you if you need to, and just take notes. Those are for you to take home at the end of this. But mental health is a state of mental well-being that, number 1, enables people to cope with stresses of life. 2, it helps people realize their abilities. And finally, it helps people learn how to work well and contribute to their community, okay? So someone that is in good or well mental health has these characteristics, okay? Or these traits. Before we talk about mental illness, let's talk about what mental illness is not, all right? So really quickly, I would like for some volunteers to read 3 of these things, all right? So I'll just have 3 of you read some of these. But if I could have one volunteer, you can pick whichever one, and I would like for you to read it as a statement, so I'll give an example really briefly. Mental illness is not a sign of weakness, right? Can I get a volunteer to read one? Go ahead, Brenda.
Mental illness is not a bad thing.
Perfect. Someone else. I heard someone.
Need is not a need for attention.
Perfect. So I have one more.
Mental health illness is not just in your head.
Right on. Thank you so much. Beautiful. So mental illness is not something to be ashamed of. Mental illness is not discriminatory, all right? So mental illness does not affect just the rich, just the poor, just a specific gender. It affects everyone throughout the world, okay? So it does not discriminate. Mental illness is not something you can snap out of, all right? Mental illness is not being selfish. And mental illness is not you being a burden, all right? So I wanted to emphasize these things because these are some of the most common misconceptions that people have when it comes to mental illness, and we're going to talk about some of the barriers.
Is somebody listening?
I'm listening.
I did not know it was listening.
Perfect, yeah. Great job. Brittany's beating y'all, okay? Two for none. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. So let's talk about some of the reasons why folks might reach out and get some mental health services. So some of the reasons are, and it's not just, notice that it's not just mental illnesses up here, okay? Because again, people are in different places of their lives. You've probably heard me say that already 3 times throughout this presentation, and we're only on like slide 4, okay? But I want to emphasize that mental illness is not the only reason why people seek mental health services. Let's start with number 1, parenting advice. Nobody comes into this world, you've probably heard it from your parents. If you are a parent, you've probably used this line or will use it at some point. But nobody comes with the manual, right? Nobody comes with a guide to be a parent. And so sometimes parents need that extra support, that guidance as to how to deal with or how to love and care for their children. And so they might come in to see a counselor or a psychiatrist because they want parenting advice. They might also come in for relationship advice, all right? And this one's a little bit more broad. It's not just your romantic relationships that you have with your spouse or your significant other. You might also come in because you have a difficult relationship at work with someone and you want to work through how do I work with that person? At the end of the day, I have to be with them, so how can I work better with them? And that might be where a counselor or professional comes in. You might also come in for stress-related issues or problems. Please raise your hand if you have never experienced stress or you think you've never experienced stress. Right. If you look around, nobody was raising their hand. That person did not come today because they don't exist, right? We all experience stress in some way or shape, and that means different things for people, right? But we all know what stress feels like and what it looks like in ourselves. Another reason why people might come in is trauma or post-traumatic stress disorder. Trauma is also one of those things that can be very broad There's a spectrum of things that people might come in for, right? Ranging from domestic violence to sexual assault. There's other things of trauma or other reasons why a person might have gone through a traumatic experience, and so they come in and they try to work to learn some coping skills for that event. Anxiety. We all probably have heard anxiety and depression the most. It was on the previous slide because a lot of times people think mental health or mental illness is just related to anxiety and depression, and that is not always true, right? But they are the most common. We hear anxiety, we hear depression almost all the time. I think I probably hear it at least once every single day. Whether you experience it, any of these things, or have someone that has gone through them, anxiety and depression might also be a reason why people come in. Bipolar disorder, ADHD, self-identity. Self-identity is one that I wanted to talk about as well. And it's not just for folks that with gender dysphoria or folks that are dealing with their sexual orientation. Self-identity is more encompassing as well. People might come in, we often as human beings feel like, what is my purpose, right? Or we might ask this question, what is my purpose? And so people at some points in their life might have these questions. And we have these moments of crisis, if you will, where we're just thinking, what am I doing here? What was I put on this earth to do? And so it's these like self-crises that we have that sometimes people just don't know where they're at in life. And so coming in to talk to someone might help. Life stage issues, again, one of those things, right? We all go through different stages in life. I'm not as old as I used to be, 10 years old, obviously. And so this stage in life that I'm at right now with my significant other, and our relationship, and just in general, might not be what I dealt with as a senior in high school, right? And so how do I navigate adulthood? How do I navigate asking for benefits? How do I do my taxes? All of these things that build stress and that create stressors in our lives, right? You can come to talk to a counselor about some of these things. They might not be able to tell you how to do your taxes, but they might be able to give you some coping skills as to how to deal with stress and other things like that. Grief and loss. Grief and loss is also one of those broader terms as well. It's not just talking about the loss of a loved one. Grief and loss can actually come from anything that we lose, right, in our lives. We've had people that have come in, or I've known of people that have come in because they've lost a limb. And so having to deal with who they were before they lost that limb and grieving that loss and having to define what their relationships at home look like, what their roles look like, right? If I was, for example, the provider in my family and now I cannot provide the way that I knew how, right, in terms of money, what does that mean for me? And so I'm grieving the loss of that limb and that person that I used to be. So it's not just for the people that have lost someone. And finally, but definitely not least, suicidal thoughts, right? Suicide is a big component in mental health. It's one of the things that I feel like more people are talking about, which is great. We need that, right? We need more people to have the difficult conversations and talk about suicide, which can be a horrific thing that nobody can prepare you for. And so hopefully, if you know someone that is having suicidal thoughts or suicidal ideas, you can guide them, give them the right resources, and point them to the right direction. So besides staying alive, which is pretty important, I think, what is a reason or some of the barriers that people might have for not coming to seek mental health services? Any volunteers? Finances, thank you. Another reason you think people don't seek help or services? Stigma.
Family, actually.
Family.
Past. Growing up, some family members said, if you have problems, you keep it to yourself, you deal with it, and move on.
Right on.
You don't need to know anything. Nobody needs to know your business.
Perfect. Anybody else? Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
All right, so you hit on some of the bigger ones. I'm just going to give some examples. This is not an extensive list, all right, so there's more reasons out there, but you touched on some pretty big ones. Number one, stigma. Stigma is negative perceptions of mental health illnesses. So the word stigma itself means negative perceptions. All right, there's a literal translation that is used to describe stigma as a label or a mark. Okay, so a mark, you are putting a mark on something. All right, so back in the day, they used to brand things, right? Like we have different types of almost like, bear with me, my second language is English, so Spanish is kicking in. So I know the word in Spanish. Insignia. Does anybody can someone help me with that?
Insignias.
Insignia?
Insignias.
Insignia.
Yeah.
So it's similar to an insignia, right, where we mark something or you branded something. The word stigma means that you are putting a mark on something. So although we're not doing it literally, right, we're not going around and marking people, right, we are doing it figuratively still as a society and as people in our communities, in our families, right? She talked about in our families. We are marking people with these negative connotations or negative misconceptions about, well, if you seek mental health services, it must be because this, and this. So stigma's a big one. Bad experiences. Sometimes people reach out for help. They actually take the right steps and they get in to see a counselor, and sometimes, getting that appointment was not the easiest thing. So they had a bad experience. Sometimes the counselor was not a right fit, or the psychiatrist or the provider was not a right fit, and so they think that because that was not a good connection that they built, that was not a right fit, then they think, well, why should I even go back? And that is not always the case. You can always get someone else, right? You can talk about those things, those complaints about, well, maybe they couldn't get me in until 2 months. All right, let's talk about those things, but please get help. Please come back for services. Lack of resources, access to care. So this one is a little bit different than the financial strains, but I want to talk about lack of resources. We live in communities where there are silos of barriers to access to mental health services. So what that means is, we know it, we live in these rural communities, right? If you have ever tried to schedule an appointment, you know how difficult it might be to schedule an appointment with an available provider. Or even someone within where you live, right? We live in Rifle. Sometimes people have to go to Glenwood. Sometimes people have to come from Meeker to Rifle. And so there's definitely an issue and a barrier to access to care. Financial strains. Monica talked about this one. It costs money to come get these services, right? And not everybody is as blessed as some of us to have access to insurance. So some people are uninsured, some people, even with insurance, it's costly, right? So we're thinking, I'm gonna come and pay a $50 copay every single time I see my counselor, and that can be a financial burden. So recognizing that. Language and cultural barriers. How often have I heard, right, there's no bilingual providers. And not only do they not speak my language, but then they also don't understand me culturally. We live in this great nation that is the United States, that we have all heard the saying, right, this is a melting pot, and we have so many cultures, so much diversity, and that is an amazing thing, and with that comes its own problems, right? We have all of these different ethnicities, cultures in our great country, and we don't unfortunately always have the providers that can meet patients with those needs in their cultures. So that's also a barrier. Busy schedules. We live in a day and age where productivity is a must, right? And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. We work in a hospital. This is a business. We know at the end of the day, if I want to go to Starbucks, I better have money, right? Nobody's going to hand me a free coffee. Well, maybe, because my husband works there, but that's a different story. But we need money, and that is just the fact, folks. We have busy schedules, and as a parent, right, I'm thinking about all you parents in the room. It's so easy for me as a non-parent to say, well, why don't you just come in for an appointment? And then I don't recognize that you have to take your kids to preschool, to school, to daycare. Who's going to pick up those kids, right? Who's going to go pick up prescriptions for Grandma Sally because she ran out of her medications last night and didn't tell anyone? You know, all of these things that come up for people. We have busy, busy schedules, and sometimes it's just not something that we accommodate in our lives, or that we have the luxury of saying, well, I'm going to take off an hour from every week and I'm going to go see my counselor, if you can get in to see them, right? So busy schedules. Personal opinions. Somebody back there talked about that, Donna. Personal opinions or family, she said. Some people just don't think that it works. Some people have their own beliefs, religious beliefs and practices as well. and they just don't think mental health is something that you need to come see or talk to someone about. They prefer to keep it down low, to keep it within the family, right? Why are you going to go talk to so-and-so about your issues? They're going to think you're weak. They're going to think you're crazy. They're going to think all of these things, and at the end of the day, you're still not coming in to get the services. Not only am I being a barrier to my loved ones, to my family, but I'm being a barrier to myself, right? Because if I think these things enough to say them out loud, to tell my daughters, to tell my grandkids, to tell my spouse, don't go seek mental health services because we can figure this out together, even though I might not be equipped, then that definitely means that I'm also taking that advice, right? I'm probably not seeking that help as well. Any questions, comments so far? Perfect. All right, next slide. So why is mental health important? We're talking about what mental health is, what mental illness is. We're talking about why people might or might not come, but why is mental health important? Well, I'll give you 3 reasons. You can add to these reasons, you can take them to the bank, but what you cannot do is take away from them, okay? Because these are the truth, folks. Number 1, mental health is important because it is a part of our overall well-being. Believe it or not, right? Donna talked about it again. Sorry, I'm picking on you, Donna, but you brought up a great point. Some people just don't believe that this works. And they don't believe that it works because they don't recognize it as being part of their overall health, right? You would not tell someone that has diabetes, don't go to the doctor and get your medication because I don't believe that diabetes is a real thing, right? If we thought like that, people would be comatose, right? And our ERs and our hospitals would be full because people are not coming because we're not recognizing that diabetes is a real thing. It's the same thing with mental health. Mental health is real and it affects everybody, and so it's part of our overall well-being. Number 2, mental health is important because it helps us measure our own resilience to life stressors. Can somebody tell me what resilience means? Does anybody have an idea of what resilience might be? There's no wrong answers.
The ability to bounce back from something or recover from something.
Perfect. Did you see my presentation? I'm just kidding. Resilience is in fact defined as the ability to bounce back from problems in life, okay? The real definition or the literal definition for resilience is how easy an object can bounce back into shape. So it's often used to describe, again, bear with me with the word because English is not my best, but it's used to describe elasticity. Yes, we got it? Okay, that is how you say it. Elasticity. So how quickly a shape comes back to its original form or shape, right? So if you're thinking of a ball that gets melted, right? If it's made out of rubber, can it come back to its original shape? Depends on the material, the rubber type, right? So resilience, that's what it means. Mental health is important because it helps us understand suicide and take preventative measures, okay? This is, again, one of the biggest reasons why mental health is important, because suicide is a real thing and it affects all of the communities across, not just our communities, not just in the US, but across the world, all right? So resilience, like we learned, is used to describe how quickly a substance or object springs back into shape, and it is also a measure of our mental health, okay? Resilience is a tool that can help us measure how well we cope with issues and how quickly we bounce back from a problem. So we're going to find out really quickly. I'm going to give everybody 2 minutes to do the test that is in front of you. It is a quiz. I do want to talk about this quiz really briefly. It is by Dr. Al Siebert. All the credit goes to him. He is cited as a source on the bottom, so if you click that link and you want more information at the end of this, you can visit that site and you're going to get all the information straight from his website. But this quiz is a great indicator of where you're at this moment in your life with resiliency. This is not an end-all be-all, so by any means, if you don't score as well as you thought you were going to, that is okay. It's just a self-assessment. It's going to help you find out where you're at. And yes, thank you, Perla. If you don't have a pen, feel free to grab one. But I'm going to give us 2 minutes really quickly. You can direct your attention back to the screen. Otherwise, you can keep working. That is okay with me. But I just wanted to let you know what's on the other side of that sheet. There's a scoring guide, and there is an extensive list of some of the qualities or traits that a resilience person might portray, okay? So there's a lot of information on that back, folks. You feel free to look at it whenever you have a chance. But there's a scoring guide that can help you find out how resilient you are in this point in your life. If you scored an 80 or higher, that means you're very resilient. If you scored 65 to 80, that means you're better than most. 50 to 65 means you're slow, but it's adequate. 40 to 50 means you're struggling, and anything under 40 means that they definitely recommend that you seek professional help to talk about resiliency and how you can build some of those resiliency skills, okay? So like I said before, resiliency, the point that you're at with resiliency in your life does not mean it's going to always be this way. We are human beings, we fluctuate, and so these can also go up and down. Let's talk about some statistics really quickly. 1 in 5 US adults experience mental illness. 1 in 20 US adults experience serious mental illness. Mental illness, and there is a typo on there, okay? It's not metal, but it is mental. Mental illness, serious mental illness is different than a mental illness in that mental illness, serious mental illnesses interfere with a person's life and ability to function, okay? So these are your chronic conditions, okay? So one great example is depression. There is situational depression and there is chronic depression. Situational depression might be when you have a situation, shocker, that might have triggered a response, right? You're in this funk, you're feeling sad, you're feeling hopeless because of this specific situation. For example, postpartum, or you lost your job, or you had the loss of someone, so you might be in this situational depression. Versus a chronic depression might be where you had these weeks, now months, now years, where you feel like you're still again in this funk and you can't get out of it. You're feeling sad, you're feeling hopeless. Now it's gotten worse and you're having suicidal thoughts or ideations, and so there is something chronic going on. Like I talked earlier before, there might be a chemical imbalance, right, that your professional might be able to pinpoint. And so that is the difference between your serious illnesses and a mental illness. Okay? Any
Somebody
questions?
listening?
I'm listening.
Perfect. Thank you, Brittany. She's going to get all the points. All right. 47.2% of U.S. adults with mental illness received treatment in 2021. So in the year 2021, less than 50%, less than half of the U.S. population that needed help got the help they needed. That is kind of sad, in my opinion. I don't know how you feel about it, but less than 50% of the people that needed help got it. So there is a big population of people that has gone without the proper care. People with depression have a 40% higher risk of developing cardiovascular and metabolic diseases than the general population. Of those, people with serious mental illnesses are nearly twice as likely to develop these conditions. All right, so there's again that connect from our physical well-being and our mental health. That we are one, we're whole people, right? And so at the end of the day, I can't go home and unplug my brain and put it aside and not feel emotions and not feel everything, the turmoil, the stress of the day, right? I'm gonna think about it, I'm gonna feel it, and I might even feel it in my physical health, right? Before you all came in here, we were talking about some of the stress responses, and so like I feel it in my gut, right? People say I feel butterflies, I feel anxiety in my stomach, I feel like I can't breathe. Anxiety, depression, some of these mental illnesses can create real symptoms, physical symptoms, I should say. And 33.5% of U.S. adults with mental illness also experience a substance use disorder. In 2021, that is 19.4 million individuals. Okay, so these are people that might be dealing with some substance abuse disorders or substance abuse illness as well. And 25 plus million rural Americans, that's us as well, live in a mental health professional shortage area where there are too few providers to meet this demand. Okay, so again, talking about access to care, how can I improve that statistic, 47.2%, if I have all of these barriers that make it hard for me to even get help, the help that I need. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. This topic comes up almost every time that we talk about mental health, right? And that is suicide. In 2021, for the state of Colorado only, where do you think suicide ranked? On a scale of 1 to 100, 100 being the least common cause, 1 being the most serious, where do you think suicide ranked?
Yeah, I was gonna say 3.
Someone said 3. Any other? 1? Any other? Brittany, what do you think? Where do you think it ranked?
5.
5. Donna?
2.
2. 1.
I feel like I should know this. And
That's okay.
I was thinking like third. That was
Third?
my first guess.
All right. So you might be a little bit shocked, but not too shocked. In 2021, suicide ranked as the 8th. Okay, so it is still top 10. It is still definitely very bad. It was up there with other things like chronic heart problems, accidents, other stuff that are also part of our health, but it's still shocking that it's within the 10 leading causes of death in our state, all right? That number should not be as high, okay? Some really quick statistics about suicide. In 2021, 48,183 people died by suicide in the United States. That is 1 death every 11 minutes. The Super Bowl is coming up, right? And I don't know much about football, folks, so I'm not going to pretend that I'm a super football fanatic, but I want to recognize that people love the sport. And so I had to research. And if I'm wrong, please correct me, because like I said, I'm not an expert in that field. But it sounds like there is 15 minutes in every quarter. Does that sound right? Don, Carol's shaking her head yes, so we're good. Okay, fact check, people. But it sounds like for every quarter there's 15 minutes, and so for every quarter of the game that is coming up this Sunday, right, every 11 minutes or every quarter, someone is going to be taking that decision of ending their life. Someone is going to make the ultimate call in their life to say, I have had enough, I don't have the help that I need, I don't have any other answer, and the only solution that I have to my problems right now is death. And they're going to make that final call, that final decision to end their life. So something for you to think about, okay? So we talked about staying alive is very important for people, right? It is the ultimate goal, I think. But besides staying alive, what are some other reasons that people might seek mental health services or get help? People might, some of the benefits that we might reap from getting help might include the ability to manage and reduce stress. We've been talking about stress, how to reduce and manage stress. Personal growth, right? If you're coming in, you're getting tips, you're getting what you need, you might be able to work on yourself. And so you're having some personal growth or some increased self-confidence. It might help increase your resiliency. So if you took that quiz and you were not at a point where you were happy with, you could come in and talk about that with your counselor or psychiatrist as well. It helps improve your life satisfaction. It helps gives you relief and helps you with coping skills to deal with mental illnesses. It helps improve your problem-solving abilities. It can also increase your social support, right? So you're being happier, or not necessarily just being happier, but you're having the tools that you need to live the life that you would hope that you want, then you'll probably, you're probably interacting with people more, right? That's not true for everybody, because there are some folks that just prefer to be alone. That's okay. But you might be able to interact better with other people. You might be willing to put yourself out there to be more social. It also helps better your communication skills, and it gives you an optimism about life. Any questions so far?
Is somebody listening?
I'm listening.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
This is awesome.
All right. So how can we overcome mental health barriers? This is the action item, okay? This is the point in the presentation, folks, where this is where you can implement something in your life or in your lives that might help break down some of the barriers we talked about earlier. So how can we overcome mental health barriers? Number one, normalize the mental health talk. Let's talk to our loved ones. Let's bring up the elephant in the room. Let's have these difficult conversations and talking to our youth, to our kids, your grandkids, your coworkers even, if you feel comfortable enough to check in on them and say, hey, I've noticed that something's on your mind, or I can just tell in your face something's going on. Can we please talk? And invite them, right? Don't do it in a public setting. Don't go disrupt their work and say, hey, what's going on with you? Take the time and ask them, can we just chat? And they might say, I'm fine, I'm just a little bit stressed, and that's totally cool. But you might be able to be that first point of contact for that person who is too scared or that doesn't know where to start. You might be able to be that little bug in their ear to say, hey, someone is listening. Next, listen non-judgmentally. This one is very important, right? We talked about family. Family can be a very big part of listening. Listening non-judgmentally. How often have I also heard people that say, well, I reached out to my dad and he just kind of told me, hang in there, bud. And I reached out to my friend, and my friend was like, yeah, well, that sucks, man. We're not really paying attention to what people say sometimes, or what people are telling us, that they're telling us, I need help. They're reaching out. They're actually asking for help in a subtle way, right? They might not directly be telling you, I need help, or I'm having these thoughts, but they might be asking for help, and we're just missing the mark. Stay away from misconceptions and stereotypes. When we looked at that slide, what mental illness is not, we touched on some of those stereotypes. But there are many, many other stereotypes and misconceptions about mental illness and mental health services. So stay away from those, right? So instead of saying, well, everybody gets sad, talk to the person, find out why they're feeling sad. Instead of generalizing and making this already idea of what they should be feeling or how they should be dealing with things, try to be empathetic, try to be compassionate. Not necessarily saying put yourself in their shoes, but just listen to them. Stay informed. All right, this one's a big one. This one has work with it, right? We don't just show up and already know all the answers. So it's important for us to stay informed, stay up to date with the statistics, stay up to date with the resources in our valley. If we don't have resources, then seek resources, right? Ask the questions, get informed. And finally, but not less important, is get treatment. So actually push the person, or encourage them, I should say, to get the help that they need. Or if this applies to yourself, get treatment, get yourself some help. Really quickly, I would like to share a personal story with all of you. Up on this screen is my brother-in-law. His name was Caden. And I really want to just touch base with you all on a quick story that has impacted my life in a big way, and that will forever impact what I do and everything, how I see the world. And so I just wanted to share that back with you all. If at any point in time you feel like the conversation's getting kind of deep or anything like that, please feel free to take care of yourself. You're not going to offend me, okay? But I really just wanted to talk about Caden. In the summer of 2021, we got a call from my mother-in-law letting us know that my brother-in-law had been talking about suicide, and they had actually reached out to a friend to tell them, hey, I think I'm going to kill myself. And they gave some details, not all the specifics, but they gave them some details as to how they were going to do it. It was around between 12 a.m. to 3 a.m. when this happened. So he's having this conversation with their friend, and this friend did the right thing, right? And so she reached out to my mother-in-law and says, hey, Caden's gonna do something drastic, you need to intervene. And so then the police got involved, right? They did a welfare check on them, 3 in the morning. The cops show up to my mother-in-law's house, make sure that he's okay. They give him the number to the Aspen Hope Center, and that's that. The next morning, Carson and I wake up, and we get all this information from my mother-in-law, and she tells us, well, this happened last night, it was in the middle of the night, so we just want you guys to come in and check on Caden. And so we did. We went over and we talked to him. At the time I was working for another clinic. I was not as well aware of the resources, and I did not have any of the trainings that I have now for mental health services. And so with what I could help, because this has always been a passion of my mental health, I helped as much as I could. So I sat down with him and I got to talk to him. We got to talk for a little bit more than an hour. Okay, so just him and I talking back and forth. What's going on? Why are you feeling like you need to die? You know, how did you, I didn't even know about safety plans back then, but I asked him, how were you going to kill yourself? What were you thinking about doing? And so he shared with me, right? Super, I hate to say this, but super innovative way that he shared with me. He was like, he had this plan. He was going to take off the authorities or someone with a gun and essentially get himself killed. That is what he wanted to do. We got to talking. Like I said, it was a little bit more than an hour. And finally, I tell him something that I probably would not share with someone else or that I would not give as advice to people, but I told him something that resonated with him in that moment. And I told him, you know what, Caden, I don't think you want to die, because if you wanted to die, I don't think you would have told your friend, because you knew that friend and you knew that she was going to reach out to someone. And so I think instead you just want everything, like all this pain to go away. You just want to move out of this town. You just want something to change in your life. And he looked at me, and I will never forget his eyes, very sincere eyes. And he looked at me and he just said, damn, Fran, I think you're right. And so we got to talking. We came up with this kind of plan, right? Again, I was not aware of it, but we came up with this check-in system. And so we told him, we're going to check in with you, your brother and I, at least once a week. And whenever you feel like you need to reach out to us, please do so. But we're going to reach out to you at least once a week and ask you, how are you doing? And we want you to be so, so honest. Even if it hurts, even if you think that's not what they want to hear, we want you to be honest with us. Tell us what it is that you need, where you're at. And so we did that for a few months. And then 2022 comes around. We kind of had forgotten all about this incident, right? And February 27th rolls up. And it was my mom's birthday. So we're getting ready for this big party over at my mom's house over in Battlement Mesa. And so we're having an off day. Carson and I were just kind of like having this weird day. We're kind of arguing. He's in a bad mood. He's not hungry. It was like 3 o'clock and he hadn't eaten anything all day. And I'm like, what's going on? Are you mad because we're at my parents' house? What's going on? And so he could not pinpoint the why. But he had this gut feeling of something is off. Something does not feel right. I'm not going to tell you he knew. I'm not going to tell you, well, we had this premonition. It was just an off day. There was something in the atmosphere that day that did not sit well with his brother. And so we're about to sit down to eat, and it is roughly 5 o'clock, and we're sitting down. I'm about to take a bite of my taco, and Carson gets this call from his sister. And if you have teenagers, you know that they don't like to call, you know that they don't like to talk on the phone. And so immediately I tell him, answer the phone. And so he does. He picks up the phone, and right off the bat, there's screaming going on. Carson, you have to come over. Caden shot himself. He's gonna die. And so Carson's face, I will never forget the call. I will never forget his face. We just dropped everything, got up from the table, and ran out the door. My family's asking, where are you going? What's going on? And as we're walking out, I just scream, Caden shot himself, I gotta go. So we get in the car, we drive to Grand River, which is where he was brought. And I'm not kidding you all when I say we got here probably in like 10, 15 minutes up from the battlement. It was probably around 10 minutes. We were driving insanely fast, off the record. I do not recommend anybody does this, but we had an emergency, right? And so we were driving really fast. We get to the ER, we see the chopper, the Flight for Life helicopter, and in my gut, I'm like, there's hope. Maybe they're gonna take him, they're gonna transport him, he's gonna be okay. And so I'm telling Carson this as we're walking into the ER doors, and to our surprise, those ER doors swing open. We hadn't even made it to the front desk to tell the clerk why we were there, and the doors just open, and I see his sister walking down the hall, and she's crying, and she says, Carson, he didn't make it, Caden's gone. He's gone, he's dead. So we walk in through those ER doors, we see Caden laying on the gurney, just how he had been brought in, and his eyes were still open. Those sincere eyes that I had looked at, that had told me, you're right, I don't want to die, not even 9 months before, were still open. And so I had the really tough chore and also blessing of having to close those eyes, because that is something that as a parent I don't think you're ever prepared to do, and you don't want to do. And if you've ever experienced the loss of someone, you know that their body is not the same as when we're alive and well. And so his eyes would not close. I had to close those eyes. I had to hold those eyes closed until they didn't open again. After that, we had to deal with everything that comes with grief and the loss and the tragic loss of someone, right? Something as traumatic as that. And so I started being that rock, right? As a husband, as a family member, because they are my family, I wanted to be there in all of the ways that I could. And so I started putting my needs on the back burner. And I started to take care of everyone in whichever way that I could, right? If it was Francisco, we need food. Francisco, we need to go get the kids from school. Whatever it was, I was willing to do it because they're my family and I love them. But I was putting my needs on the back burner, and I got to a point where on a drive back from Glenwood, I'm driving, and it's one of those drives where everything was off. There was no music, nothing was playing. Literally, it's just the sound of the car, me driving, and I hear all of these thoughts in my head just kind of race, right? I'm starting to come to terms with everything that I had just gone through, myself, from my point of view, my relationship with Caden, and my world just started hitting me with reality, with the reality of things. And so I started to have this emotional breakdown in my car. Before that, I had reached out to my friends in those subtle ways, right? Where you're not going to ask, hey, I need someone to talk to, but when they ask, right? When they were asking, how are you doing? Well, I would say, well, how well can I be? Something like that. And so to me, that was me reaching out, but I was not being direct. I was not asking people for help. And so what ended up happening is that I felt alone. I felt like nobody could help me. I'm helping my family. I'm being there for them, but who's there for me? And so I have this moment in the car where I'm screaming and I'm crying and I'm yelling, and I yelled something along the lines, I'm not going to tell you it was exactly word for word, but it was something along the lines like, is anybody listening to me? And I called my friend, who actually happens to be my roommate now. She's a great friend. But I called my friend at the time, and I was like crying, and I'm like, hey, I think I need to talk to someone. I need help, and I have tried to reach out for help, and you guys have not helped me, and I'm just venting, and she let me because she knew that was, if I'm at this point, it must be really important. So she let me kind of get off whatever I needed to off my chest, and she says, we hadn't reached out to you because we wanted to be respectful. And how amazing is that she told me the reasons why. And so then from there on, it was like that bouncing, that jumping point, because from there I was able to get some help. I had some tendencies, some substance abuse issues that I was dealing with. I was smoking, drinking every single day, chain smoking, doing all the things that I should not have been doing to take care of myself. And I was able to quit all of that. I was able to get help. I was able to get in contact with my primary care provider, seek mental health options, all of these things. And so that was the jumping point for me. And it was so important that I had that conversation with her. So you might be thinking, well, Caden still died. This is not the happy ending we wanted to hear in a mental health services presentation, but I will tell you this much. I will forever be grateful for the time that Caden allowed us to share with him, that grace period after we had this talk, after we had this honest discussion, because truly something in him just was saying, I've had enough, where I feel like we've tried all the things. And so it led him to that point, but I will forever be thankful for that grace time that we got, those few extra months that we got with him, and I would not trade those for anything. And so if you're thinking, well, this is not the ending we wanted, what I hope you get from this story is that there is hope. There is hope in mental health services, and mental health services can actually provide hope. This is an easy way to memorize what hope means. We did come up with this, all right, so we didn't snatch it off the internet. We came up with this acronym. Hope can give you healing to overcome pressures of every day, okay? So if there's something you want to take away from this whole presentation, I hope it's this. So where do I begin, Francisco? Really quick, I'm just going to I'm just going to run through these really quick. But mental health, where do I begin my mental health care journey? Number one, speak to your primary health provider. Ask questions. Let them know that you're interested in counseling or psychiatric services. Be honest with them. Have that difficult conversation. And they might be able to place a referral, give you resources, right? They will never be angry at you for asking questions. Always ask questions. Number 2, schedule an appointment with the counselor. When you schedule your appointment with a counselor or psychiatric provider, please be honest with them. Please let them know if you have any fears or concerns about counseling that they might be able to explain or make you feel at ease about. And tell them what you want to get out of counseling. They will love this. If you have an idea already of, I'm at this point in my life and I want to get to this is what I want the end result to look like, let them know so together you can work towards that goal. And if you have no idea, I don't know what I want the end goal to look like, that is totally fine. But this is just a suggestion. And last but not least, talk to a family or friend member. It is vital that you have support or a support system, whatever that looks like for you, okay? Like I mentioned in my story, that friend really made the world of a difference to me. Perhaps I made a difference to Caden's life for those months, right? And so having support at home, your counselor can only help you so much, but once you step out of the office, they're not going to be with you 24/7. So it's important that you have support at home or in your circle. So finally, somebody asked the question.
Is anyone listening?
Is anybody
I'm
listening?
listening.
Perfect. All right. So when you asked that question at any point during this presentation, Brittany, how did that make you feel? Truly, be honest. If you felt, well, I just did it because you asked me to, or I felt like, it was just kind of a silly exercise, that's okay. Be honest.
I'm pretty competitive, so I wanted to.
She wanted to smash the competition.
Yes.
Yes, she did. I believe that. All right. Anybody else that asked the question? Brianda?
All overthinking?
You were overthinking. All right. Monica, I think you asked it.
Huh? Oh, I don't know. I have no thoughts.
Cool. Anybody else? Carol, how did that make you feel?
It was trying to beat Brittany to it.
You were trying to be Brittany. All right. Carol, did you, or Donna, did you ask the question at all?
I did not, no.
Did you ask it to yourself?
Well, when I heard it the first time, I thought, does it look like I'm not listening?
she did this a little bit later.
Yes.
All right. So the point or the purpose of this exercise was to get us to kind of feel for a split second what it might feel like for someone who is truly asking for help, what that might feel like, right? So at first, I could read the room. It kind of was awkward. People were uncomfortable with the question. Besides Brittany, who was like, I'm here to slay the competition.
No, you know what? To lend to that, I will say,
Yes.
like, it was hard because I'm like, well, I don't want to interrupt him.
Yes.
But then I don't really want to, I also don't want to be the only one talking, so I should let somebody else talk. Like, there was a little bit of
There was that
mental-
overthinking, right, component. And so just imagine if this was just a silly exercise, if you will, if this was just a way to kind of interact with each other, imagine how difficult it might, or it actually is, for someone to ask that question. Can I get help? Is somebody listening to me? Can I talk to you? So if you ask yourself those questions at the beginning, I would like to just reflect on them really quickly. If you have ever felt like you needed guidance through a change in life, know that there is help for you. If you have ever felt so alone that when you are surrounded by people, no one sees you still, know that you are not alone. If you have ever felt like there is no hope in life or a reason to keep on living, know that you matter. Know that you matter. Know that you matter. And if you ever have had so much to say and felt like people didn't want to listen to you, know that someone is listening. I'm not going to leave you high and dry. I do have some quick resources as well for all of you. I have plenty of information up front if you're interested in any for yourselves, for a friend, for a colleague. Please take as much information as you need. I did print these out so you don't have to try to memorize numbers or take pictures. So if you would like any of the information on this presentation, please let me know, and I'm happy to share that with you. I did also cite my sources after this page, but I'm going to leave this up for y'all to see. But if you want my sources so that you can go in and do some more digging research, I'm happy to email those to you. Please let me know because they have some great information, statistics, data, you name it, okay? I would like to thank all of you for coming. This was my presentation. I'm happy you could make it, and I hope you take at least one thing from this whole hour that we've spent together, believe it or not, already. I know some of you can't believe it. You're like, yep, I'm tired. But if you took anything from this, this was well worth my time. So I want to thank you all.